If you really want to learn how to work with your thoughts effectively, today we're going to create a template to guide your journaling practice with the pilot method. Now, last time we talked quite a bit about what happens when your brain is running on autopilot and how to catch yourself when you're overthinking. This time, I'm going to give you some practical tools for training your brain to start moving in a new direction. And this method does focus on a journaling practice, but with a new spin on the word reflection that's going to change your perspective on what you write and how it trains your brain. And before we start, it helps to think of your thoughts as things that are flying around in your head all the time. Very often in a whirlwind, especially if you're stuck in the middle of a mental storm. They are very airy things that can change very quickly, but they can also get stuck in an unproductive flight pattern. And taking some time to get some of those repeating thoughts and all that really raw information down onto a piece of paper gives you a pretty good picture of what's going on in your head. It's like looking into a mirror. And for us, that's what reflection means. Not sitting around stirring more thinking, but as a really practical way to get out of the whirlwind so that you can see what's really happening in there. These prompts don't necessarily need to be taken in any specific order or all at once, but I do believe they're most powerful when they're handwritten. And if you are typing or even talking into a device, they do still hold value, but there have been studies that show more areas of the brain are active when handwriting compared to typing. And that is the part that we are most interested in right now, especially when you're writing about your feelings. Regions in the brain for reasoning and emotion start working together and even lead to neurological repair. You might want to have more than one notebook for this. I usually use 3, but if you're only using one, I recommend something with a spiral binding so that your writing surface lays flat and so that you can tear pages out later if you want. But honestly, whatever you've got right now is perfect for today because none of it has to be perfect. It's all just practice. And the best place to start this practice is usually with a mental purge. The P in pilot stands for purging, processing, and planning. But we're going to start with the venting aspect of purging because you can't really think your way through anything very effectively in a mind that's excessively crowded. It's like trying to find something in a room that's never been decluttered. You just keep getting distracted by all the things. And in this case, topics that don't have anything to do with what you're actually looking for. So you're probably going to have to empty out some of that space. And you can use a very similar technique for purging, processing, and planning that lines up pretty closely with scientific studies on the benefits of expressive writing. The one that's most often referenced is by Dr. James Pennebaker, focused primarily on writing about painful emotions and traumatic experiences. And there is a very specific protocol for that practice that includes sitting down for 15 to 30 minutes and writing without any interruption and repeating that process for 4 days in a row or once a week for 4 weeks. And if you want the detailed instructions for that, I'll put a link in the description, but that's not exactly what we're talking about here. The instructions are similar, but the big difference is that you don't necessarily have to be writing about something that's specifically painful. This is a great way to take a look into that mental mirror, and it works best without editing, organizing, or interpreting. If you've got a topic in mind, start there, but if you don't have one, that's okay. This kind of rewriting or stream of consciousness writing is all mental processing and all of its purging. And the venting aspect of the purge will make some space for more productive thoughts to surface. The only real instruction is simply to start writing and keep writing, including anything that has to do with a specific event or problem or worry or circumstances that are linked or related in any way, and any feeling words that come to mind. And to do it for at least 15 minutes. And shorter writing sessions are still useful, but if you want to stick to the protocol, I do recommend that you set a timer so that you can just get lost in the process. And you don't want to limit yourself to that. If the timer goes off and you don't feel like you're done, just keep writing and writing faster than you're thinking. You want to keep your hand moving the whole time without rereading anything or worrying about the words you choose or how it looks, and without trying to make any sense of it yet. Your only goal during this phase is to free write for as long as it takes to run out of actively streaming content. And you can do exactly the same thing for planning. It's still a purge and it's still processing, but with a slightly different purpose. This is what I call planned daydreaming. And again, if you've got a topic in mind, start there, but you can change topics anytime with anything that you think you might want to have or do or be. You set your timer and you do the writing in the exact same way for 15 minutes. And the only difference this time is that you're probably going to be writing about best case scenarios and all the things that you would do if you knew that you couldn't fail and what it would feel like to have all those things. And those thoughts might be linked to past success or big plans for the future that you've been putting off, or even just describing your perfect day. There's no right or wrong to this. It's just to write without monitoring what comes out. And depending on your topic and your purpose, you might have some really intense emotions come up. And if they do, take the time to sit with it when you're done. And just that will almost always quiet things down in your head a little bit. Now, there are other techniques that I like to use sometimes for similar purposes, and we probably will talk about some of those in the future, but this one is just so simple. You just write until you're done. That leads us to the I in Pilot. Now, I stands for information, intention, and inspiration. And you can do this right away or another day, but when you're ready to take the next step in the process, I do recommend reading what you wrote to start looking for patterns. And not to beat yourself up or pick it apart or get lost in it again. But if you went all the way to the end of thinking in that purging phase, you will almost certainly find at least one pattern. And that's what you're looking for here. There's a tone to that pattern and probably a topic that keeps repeating. And it usually doesn't take very long to find a theme. And you go back to some of what we've already been talking about and name some of the emotions that came up. Circle all the positive emotions in your original writing and underline everything that feels more negative. And take just a little bit of time to consider what those feelings might be trying to tell you. If you come up with more than one pattern, I still don't want you to spend a lot of time on this step. This isn't the time for critical thinking and definitely not the time for being self-critical. This is where thinking turns from dumping and clearing into observing. Now you're actively seeking information. You're asking yourself, what keeps showing up? What themes keep repeating? And this gets even more obvious if you commit to this practice for even just a few days or weeks. Which situations trigger similar thoughts? Which decisions seem to stall in the same place? Which part of you might be doing the talking here, and what feelings come up when that voice is especially loud or persistently running the show in your head? Which mental file cabinets are you digging around in right now? And the patterns you find here aren't something to judge or fix. They're data. It's information telling you where energy is stuck, where fear shows up, and where attention keeps returning for a reason. Because there's something to learn here about what you want and what you don't want and what you need. And this is a great time to set some intentions around changing anything that's taking you in the wrong direction. We've already talked about intention setting and sitting with your feelings and identifying all the different parts of you that are doing the talking in your head. And those are the foundations for self-study. And I'll link that playlist in the description as well. This same process helps you make a better connection with the part of you that's telling the truth and affirming all the productive thoughts that you're thinking. Because some thoughts just arrive differently. They don't feel reactive or defensive, and they don't loop and they don't argue. They just land clear and steady with feelings that match the energy of that more productive theme. And that's where you get your inspiration, and everything that you find here is useful information to study. So now we're going to write out all the key points from that information seeking process on a separate sheet of paper or in another notebook. List making is the L in the pilot method, and you're just creating a very simple list that clearly identifies the primary subject matter, the primary emotions, and the most obvious tone of thinking from what you wrote before. List the topics and patterns and themes and emotions, along with any intentions to set and any amount of inspiration that you identified from that original writing. Lists are especially powerful here because this does lead to a time for critical thinking. And again, not self-critical, but it is time to analyze the information that you found. Now you're listening to the part of you that's got some ideas to share. And this is where you can take that list making practice a little further. I love making lists for intention setting. Not trying to craft a sentence that sounds pretty, but one that feels true about what you really want to make more of in your life. Or you can list the feelings that you're looking for, the ones that match the energy of where you really want to go. And we talked about this before. There's more than one way to get to the end goal of any dream or plan. And somewhere in the middle of that journey, you might find out that you already got what you want, or that there's another way to get there. This can be a good time to make a gratitude list. And I know everybody tells you to do that, but for good reason. Be sure to include not just what you're grateful for, but why you're grateful for it, and be specific about why that's a good thing. That automatically starts blazing a new trail in your brain. And you don't have to do all of these. You definitely don't have to do them all at once. Use lists to analyze any form of free writing, especially when you've got something that's been weighing on you or something that you know you want to create. Use them for intention setting and brainstorming ideas when you want to get clear about what you want to make. Use them to practice gratitude when you need a reminder to be grateful for the good that you've already got. And from those lists and patterns, plans will start to emerge naturally, not as pressure, but as direction and motivation for taking inspired action. And if you don't believe me, just think of the last big purchase that you made. The very second that you thought you might want that thing, you probably picked up your phone and started looking for places to find it. And you started making comparisons and decisions about what you like and what you don't like and what works for you. And pretty soon you end up with that thing sitting in the middle of your house. It didn't get there by accident, but it didn't get there immediately or without any effort either. And the exact same thing is true here. You can make a list of ideas and opportunities and possibilities, all just stated very simply, streaming out either from rereading what you've already written or new ideas that come to you during this list making process. And when you get to this point, you really are ready to start making a task list. If you've got something that you know you absolutely need or want to do, write it down. Make a list, and then you're not carrying all of that in your head. It really will lighten the mental load, and it's gratifying to check things off as you get them done. And that's a great way to prove to yourself that you're making progress even when it feels slow. And what you do with that list of tasks brings us to the O in piloting your thoughts, and it stands for observation, organization, and the one thing. And I do recommend that you start a running list of things that need to get done, but that list can get long pretty quickly. So in this phase, prioritizing that list becomes your priority. Now, the focus shifts to figuring out what's most important to you and what will have the biggest impact. And you'll either want a new sheet of paper, or I have a daily planner that I use for this part. And from that big long running list, write down the date and the absolute bare minimum for tomorrow. Only the tasks that you absolutely have to complete, and make that list as short as you can. Then go back to your long running list again and see if there's one thing on that list that would make your life easier tomorrow. Like if you did it today, and you don't have to wait for tomorrow to do this thing. It might be super practical and related to short-term goals, but it might be something that relates to a bigger plan for the future. And either way, it's just one thing. And if you can't do it today, you put it on your list for tomorrow, included with the bare minimum. And that's how you make something good happen. I totally believe in list making for making something happen. Right there on that piece of paper, what you want is taking its first physical form. And you can sit back and see it right there in black and white. Everything there is focused on what you can do and what's doable and what you've already got. Sit back just a little further, almost like you're an outside observer. Look at your list from a really practical point of view and consider what's possible. What makes the most sense? And you're always looking for that one thing that would make the biggest difference in your life tomorrow. And organizing your day and your mind around that and making it a daily practice to know what needs to be done next. That brings us to the T, tracking your progress and setting your trajectory for the future as you take action on items from your task list. Meaningful plans for taking inspired action aren't about doing more. They're about doing what aligns with that voice in your head that knows what's good for you. It knows what you really need. All that writing uncovers the underlying teaching. There's always something to learn about yourself here. You're going back to your master task list every day and checking off things that you've accomplished, providing physical proof. You're training your brain to make progress on all the plans that you've been making. Training your brain to set a new path, training it to make plans that address the patterns that you've noticed and do something about what you want and what you don't want. And if that same desire keeps resurfacing, the plan supports it. If that same obstacle keeps reappearing, the plan addresses it. Not aggressively, not trying to overpower it, but we have finally gotten to the part where you are trying to solve it. Still not trying to fix it because it's not broken, but to learn from it and solve the puzzle, extract the important information, analyze it, do something with it, and track your progress. And thinking at this stage becomes practical and present focused. You're not asking, what should I do with my whole life? You're asking, what's the next step based on what I already know? Now you're working with your thoughts. You're not letting them drag you around or ignoring them or trying hard to control them. You're just learning to understand them. And once you've got all that information right there in front of you on paper, you've got a clear direction for how to get where you want to go. It really is like a roadmap. It's a flight plan. You've got a prepare for takeoff checklist, and it sets your trajectory and keeps you going, but you can't crumble it up and throw it out the window. You've got to keep coming back to it. It's a reflection of your inner world that paints a really clear picture of what's happening in there. But we've already talked about this. The conditions in your head can change really quickly. If you turn this into a regular practice and keep listening to the voice that tells the truth, you'll know what to do. And taking action won't feel so overwhelming anymore. That big puzzle that we've been trying to put together starts falling into place, and the bridge from awareness to action turns into a path that you're drawn to follow instead of just another task list that ends up in a drawer somewhere. And before you know it, you're not on autopilot anymore. If you come back next time, we'll start talking about inspired action, how to get motivated to do hard things, and how to express that truest version of you in everything you do.